I'm going to walk you through the exact 5 gears that I use inside of my practice that has allowed me to transition, to get people to stick around for longer, for them to have life-changing results outside of getting out of pain. And when we talk about life-changing results, what I'm talking about more purpose, people who are more passionate, people who are making more money, people who are living a life that they can actually profit from and be proud of, and not one that just continues to chase symptoms. Because if you're going to chase symptoms with your patients, what I can tell you is that you're going to compete with every other practitioner out there who does the exact same thing. Proverbs 12:19, truthful lips endure forever, but a lying tongue only lasts a moment. Doc, let me ask you a question. Do you have a practice where you are telling half-truths to your patients that are only lasting a moment, which is actually leaving you chasing people, making less money, and then because you're only telling half-truths, people don't stick with you or they don't get the full benefit of your care as a result of the way that you're communicating? If that's you, I'm going to have you consider that you should think about transitioning your practice from a pain-based style of practice to a brain-based style of practice. Because most chiropractors, they feel trapped because you only know how to sell pain, that essentially what you become is a very expensive Tylenol to the people that you get to serve. And no one would stick with you if you're inside of the pain model. And so if that's you, what I'm going to share with you in this episode is an exact breakdown of the 5 gears that I use inside of my practice to transition my practice from a pain-based style of practice to a brain-based style of practice, and one that will ultimately leave you more fulfilled, leave your patients or clients getting better results, one that you can have more fun in, work less hours in, not have to grind, and actually truly transform people's lives. If someone is looking to just mask symptoms, that is a different story. But let me ask you this. Did you ever go to the gym one time expecting to get a six-pack and then become frustrated when you didn't get a six-pack? Of course you didn't. Did you ever take your wife out on one date or your husband out on one date and expect them to marry you after that first date? My guess is that that's going to be an astounding no. A lot of times it takes time and repetition and commitment and consistency to actually get to a place that would be life-changing, that would allow you to level up in all areas of your life. And the same is true inside of your business. And so what happens is I think a lot of times that as chiros, we think that we're trying to give people what they want by meeting them with a pain conversation. But the reality is it puts you in a place where you have to compete against other services, other therapies like Tylenol, like quick fixes, like things that actually aren't going to move the needle for your patients. And the reality is that you're not helping anybody if you're not focusing on the cause of their symptoms in the first place. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. But here's the deal, is like I can remember back when I first started practicing, I would have a patient come into my office and maybe it was low back pain, maybe it was a knee, maybe it was a foot. And what they would tell me is, hey, my back's really bugging me. And then as a practitioner, what I would do is I would go and I would focus in the area where their pain was. Now, there's a huge problem with this that I've learned along the way of practicing, and the problem is this. It's that when you focus on the area where the pain is, a lot of times we're going to a symptom and not a cause. And so a really simple example of this would be if someone has low back pain, but their hip flexors are the issue, we can adjust their low back all day long. But if we don't address the hip flexors, then we may never get to the cause. And even more importantly, if we don't address why the brain is telling the hip flexors to be tight in the first place, then we don't address the cause. And so finding the cause is what's going to actually allow you to become a better clinical practitioner to help more people at a deeper level. Because what happens is when you start to address root causes, it makes sense to people. And this is what gets back to that Proverbs 12:19 is that if we're telling people the half truth and we're meeting them where they're at, as some of you have probably been advised to do by other coaches, by other mentors, by other practice management companies, is you just have to meet your patients where they're at. The problem is if you meet them where they're at, you're going to meet them where everybody else has told them that if they don't have symptoms, then they're healthy. If they don't have an issue, then they're healthy. And the reality is what I know from my life is like, I don't work out because I got fat. I work out because I never want to be fat. And the same thing should be true when you're providing neurologically based chiropractic care. It's like, we're not doing it just to get rid of someone's pain. here's what my day used to kind of look like is somebody would come in, they would lay down on the table, they would tell me the problem that they had. And then, I wanted a wellness practice, but they would lay down, they would still tell me about the problems that they had. And I didn't know what to do with them except say, I'm going to try to meet you where you're at and serve you, and then hopefully transition you into a more brain-based model of care, which had everything to do with wellness. It had everything to do with longevity. It had everything to do with the nervous system. But what I learned is that by focusing on where people's pain was, I was actually training them to focus more about their pain instead of saying something to the effect of, hey, listen, what we can do is we're going to figure out exactly where you need to be adjusted. It may not be in the spot where your pain is, because what we know is that pain is actually a chemical reaction that happens in your brain. And then that pain signal is sent down C fibers to specific parts of your body. And where you're experiencing pain may not be the actual place that you need to get adjusted or need to get stretching or need to get massaged or whatever the case may be. And so the typical day looked like this for me is somebody would come in, they would lay down and they would have a pain, and I would hope that I could quote unquote fix their pain. And I'll talk about why fixing is going to leave you stuck here in a moment. And then a lot of times what happens is when we tell people that we're going to fix their issues, we're forgetting the vitalistic principle, which is this, is that the body is self-healing, self-regulating, and self-maintaining the way God designed it. So if I tell someone specifically that I'm going to fix them, in my opinion, it actually presents the argument that I'm not allowing people to live in a vitalistic principle of body being self-healing, self-regulating, self-maintaining. Because if they were self-healing, self-regulating, and self-maintaining, my question would be, well, why do they not heal on their own? So if I can fix them, then that isn't within the vitalistic principle in the first place. And so the reality of my day-to-day looked like this, is someone would come in, they would lay down on the table, I would be frustrated that they would tell me that their rib needed pop back in for the last 40 years, and that's exactly what they needed. And I would do it because I didn't know how else to have a conversation with them. And then they would disappear after 2 visits when they told me they would commit to me for months on end. And then I would be frustrated, and I would carry that frustration home to my wife, to my kids, and I would just be in this place of frustration and exhausted, and it really felt like I was just spinning my wheels until I found the solution. And the solution is to root everything that you're doing inside of your practice inside of the vitalistic principle of the body self-healing, the body self-regulating, and the body self-maintaining the way that God designed each of us. And He made us perfectly. And the reality is that even if we have pain, if we have symptoms, those things are there as a God-given gift to keep our bodies safe and protected. But when I was practicing, if I was chasing people's pain, I was forgetting that vitalistic approach, and it left me frustrated. It left me feeling stuck. It left me feeling like I wasn't a good enough chiropractor, all of which are going to lead me to getting worse results with the people that I was taking care of. So what was the switch for me? It's 5 gears. It's really, really simple. And I'm going to walk you through the exact 5 gears that I use inside of my practice that has allowed me to transition, to get people to stick around for longer, for them to have life-changing results outside of getting out of pain. And when we talk about life-changing results, what I'm talking about more purpose, people who are more passionate, people who are making more money, people who are living a life that they can actually profit from and be proud of, and not one that just continues to chase symptoms. Because if you're going to chase symptoms with your patients, what I can tell you is that you're going to compete with every other practitioner out there who does the exact same thing. So here's what the 5 gears are. Is the first thing you have to do inside of your practice is you have to identify what your identity is and align everything that you do around that. And again, we get back to Proverbs 12:19, is that if you're telling people half-truths that aren't in line with your specific values and your specific identity, then you will forever feel stuck because you can't build up something on a poor foundation, and the foundation is your identity. So for me, when I say that I am a vitalistic chiropractor, when I say that I believe in vitalism, what I am saying is that I believe that God made us perfectly. And I will tell people this in the context of our conversations and our exams. And it's the most important thing that I tell each of our clients that we work with, is that your body was designed to heal itself. And the symptoms you are experiencing are not meant to be quote unquote taken away. And I'm not going to fix your symptoms because I'm not smarter than your body. What I'm actually doing is rooting myself in identity, and my identity as a vitalistic chiropractor who believes that God made us perfectly. That is my identity. And from there, we operate in a way that I can tell people confidently the truth about their bodies. I'm not giving them a half truth that will fix their pain, because what I tell them straight up is that we can't fix your pain. So in order to transfer and transition your practice from one that is of a very pain-based, you have to start looking at what's your identity? What are you about? What are your core values? Who did God call you to be inside of your business? And start telling people the truth from that perspective, because what will happen is people will start to trust you more. They'll start to listen to you more. When you hear the truth, it's like undeniable that it's a truth and you just want to hear more of it. But if it's a half truth, it leaves people feeling frustrated, taken advantage of, and that's why they leave in the first place, which is why I felt like I was spinning my wheels in the beginning of practice, and why you probably do too. Number two, you have to master your message. So this is what I'm talking about, is if your message is in vitalism, everywhere you look, you should be speaking vitalism in one way or the other. You can't speak pain sometimes. This also means, and this is crucial in my opinion, is that you cannot speak pain to someone on the front end of a conversation with them and then try to convert them later. They will be frustrated, you will be frustrated, and they will feel like it's a bait and switch, which is no good for anyone. Why not, in my humble opinion, why not just tell them the truth in the beginning? Remember what I said, Proverbs 12:19. Tell the truth. Let the truth come from your lips, not the half-truths. If you're giving people half-truths, they're only going to show up for you halfway. And guess what? When people show up for you halfway and you start to feel frustrated by it and you're disappointed in them, that's going to show up in every other person that you take care of. So this is key, is like messaging mastery. You have to shift your language from fixing people to allowing people to express more of what God gave them. And remember that God gave them the pain, the ability to have pain, just like he has the ability to allow someone to thrive. Next is your clinical process redesign. So you have to figure out a process and a system. So inside of our practice, what we've come up with is what we call neural integrity mapping. And so what we do in neural integrity mapping is it is a very specific process that we take our clients through that is a game changer for them, because what they get to do is they get to see a map of their brain. They get to see exactly where the imbalances are in their brain. There's a very specific set of tests that we do and neurological processes that we walk them through, and how we explain it to get somebody to the place where they feel that, oh my gosh, nobody's ever told me this truth about my body before. And when they start getting adjusted, they actually start to feel the results that are so far outside of a pain conversation that is undeniable that they would want to continue to hang around with you for a maintenance plan much longer than just a pain conversation. So you have to redesign the processes within your clinic. Next, you have to have systems for retention. So there are a bunch of processes that we do, but again, if you're looking at getting somebody out of pain, if that's your marketing on the front end, there's no system for retention, because your retention is going to be, well, just come back when your pain comes back. And you know as well as I do, because I've been there, is that is frustrating, that it's tiring, and that you can literally have a practice of your dreams with the people who you love to serve, who love coming to you, whether they're in pain or whether they're not. Yes, we're great at getting people out of pain, but that's not the point. The point is to allow them to express more of what God put inside of them, and allow them to express it at 100%. And then lastly, you have to have leadership habits. So the biggest switch for me in leadership habits is look like this, is like, regardless of how someone shows up inside of my office, regardless of how someone communicates with me inside of my office, regardless of someone's financial situation, or regardless of where someone lives, or any of those things that might play a role in how I communicate with someone, is that my leadership process is always the same. And it looks like this, is that we're going to serve people at the highest level. We're going to serve them how we want to be served. And that's just ultimately what we step into. And what's cool is that when this carries over into your team, you will have patients and clients who come into your practice, and literally the words that they're going to say to you is they're going to say, it feels like nowhere else I've ever been before. And when you feel that, and when you hear that, you know you're on the right track, and you're so far outside of a pain conversation. You're so far outside of this pain base that it becomes brain based, that it becomes vitalistic, and your messaging matches it, and your clinical processes match it, and your retention systems match it, and your leadership matches it. And it's seen from the front of house to the back of house and everything in between. And these are the most critical steps that I could possibly share with you on how to turn your practice from a pain-based, frustrating practice where I have lived into a brain-based, thriving, neurologically based, healthy people. So the number one myth is that keeping you stuck is that You've been told that you have to meet people where they're at and you have to speak to their pains, but there's a different level of pain that I think you are missing. And the pain is like, how is that affecting their actual day-to-day life? If you are going to compete in the pain conversation, you are going to be competing with a $9.99 bottle of Tylenol or Advil, which is going to leave you stuck and frustrated because when people get out of pain, they're going to stop seeing you. And then you're going to wonder why your retention's low. You're going to wonder why your PVA is low. You're going to wonder why you continually have to chase new patients. And it's the game that you're playing. It's a communication that you're playing. So stop listening to the message or stop listening to the advice of like, just meet people where they're at and then transition their mindset later. It should be done from the front end so people know that what you want to do and what you are about, like we do in our office, is just full on telling people the truth about the amazing gifts that God has given each of us to be healing, to be successful, to be happy, to be fruitful, and to multiply. All the things that are within the Bible, all the things that God created each of us with, like that's what we're inside of our practice. And I'll preach that from day one with people, not meeting them on Instagram with a pain conversation and then converting them later. To recap, the 5 steps, the 5 gears that you have to go through in order to level up your practice, get out of the pain model into a brain-based model is this. 1, you have to identify your identity and then align it with what you truly believe and what your core values are. Number 2, you have to master your messaging and how you communicate from the front end to the back end, to your emails, to your front desk phone calls, to your exam process, to your report of finding process, everything in between. All things I have mapped out inside of the Profitable Chiro network that the clients that I work with have 100% access to. Next, they have to align their clinical processes and redesign them in a way that speaks to a brain-based model of care. You're going to have to identify your retention systems and then lastly, focus on your leadership that is all holistic, that is all encompassing so that you are living out the vitalistic principle and what you truly stand for. And again, most importantly, it all has to be aligned with your identity. So if you want the exact brain-based formula that I have given every client that is inside of the Profitable Chiro network and you want it for free, DM me on Instagram at Dr. Daniel Kimbley. Just DM me, say, hey, I heard the podcast and I want the brain-based Chiro playbook. I will send it over to you absolutely for free. It's 10 steps. What it has in those 10 steps is exactly what you should do and what you should be focusing on from your first phone call to it has every single exam process that we use and an explanation of how those exams work inside of our office, inside of our process. And it will leave your practice in a place where you have more fun, where you see more people, where you make more money, where you never have to chase. And the coolest part is when you start having a practice like that, you get to serve people at a higher level. You get to have more fun. You get to express more joy. One of my favorite things about practicing is that I literally cannot call this place work. And I think that our team would say the exact same thing. It is a place that we love to be. It is a place that we love to serve. And if you're looking to transition your practice, then focus on those 5 steps that I shared with you in this episode. If you got some value out of it, share this message up with somebody who needs to hear it. Message me on Instagram. It'll change your life. I love you guys. We'll come at you live again next week. Peace.